The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has made a dramatic appeal to delegates from almost 200 countries to step up their efforts to fight global warming and its impact. He said failure to do so would be suicidal. As the UN meeting in Poland comes to a close, one group of nations, including the Maldives, has warned they face extinction without immediate action to reduce emissions and limit the rise in global temperatures. Our science editor David Shukman reports.
Almost a decade ago, an extraordinary publicity stunt. The government of the Maldives in diving gear, highlighting the danger of the level of the sea rising. The man who chaired this underwater meeting is here now.
Governments are not listening, institutions are not listening, no one seems to be listening to what the science is saying.
And what does that mean for your country?
We will disappear.
Negotiators here in Poland are frantically trying to head off the worst effects of global warming. But progress in the talks is incredibly slow. A few governments are dragging their feet. This is the heart of the process, and we've been allowed in for a couple of minutes. And what's striking is the sheer scale of the event, with nearly 200 governments represented here. And of course they've all brought their own agendas. So getting them all to agree on what to do about climate change is a massive challenge. Outside the conference, a reminder of why this is hard. Burning fuels like coal releases gases that warm the planet. But many countries, including Poland, rely on coal. I've seen the many jobs that depend on it. Pavel uses coal to heat his home. He's from a mining family. He knows that industry matters here, but also that coal is polluting.
You go outside and want to take a deep breath, the air biting your throat. Your throat. Yes.
Our daughter has a child, something like child asthma, because here the air isn't good for her.
There's the Earth coming up. Wow, that's pretty.
50 years ago, this image of our fragile planet raised awareness of potential threats to the environment. Now we're seeing where that might lead. David Shukman, BBC News in Poland.
Joined now by the climate change lawyer Farhana Yamin, who's an advisor to the Alliance of Small Island States, and she joins us from the conference in Poland. Farhana, thank you very much for joining us. How optimistic do you feel after this conference? What are you noticing that's different this time?
Well, I think there is an air of resolve to fight any outcome from here, which is too weak. And many of the small island states and the least developed countries who are going to be and already facing very, very huge consequences of climate impacts are stating that very, very clearly. Today we had several declarations from the ministers of those countries saying that they will not leave Warsaw with a poor outcome.
What's holding back further progress?
Well, we've just received the textual proposals from the Polish presidency. Those were released literally about half an hour ago, so the hall has gone quiet. But essentially, there's a group of countries who were blocking progress here. You saw, for example, the United States, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait and Russia object to a reference that would recognise, in essence, the IPCC's special report on 1.5, which says the consequences of not shifting to this lower temperature limit would be awful. So staying on a 2-degree pathway is far more dangerous. And the second half of their conclusions were that we could still stay on this safer threshold if we ramped up ambition very, very urgently starting this year.
This is a state of emergency, many commentators are saying. So what do governments need to do to sell that to the public and make us all realise that we all need to accept some changes?
Yeah, I think there are many here in the conference, and many of the, for example, demonstrations in London and even in the US, were saying, let's be truthful. We are in a state of climatic planetary emergency, and I think there is a recognition of that sets up a different kind of dynamic. If you're in an emergency, you stop squabbling politically, you put in place institutions and processes that allow cross-party, for example, unity. You put in place procedures that allow departments to coordinate their responses. So all sorts of things can happen better, actually, if you recognise that you're in a situation where, business as usual in terms of governance isn't the case. And I think that's an important shift in thinking that is starting to take hold here, but it's early steps yet.
Farhana Yamin, climate change lawyer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.